My name is Amanda. I know you're wondering, why did I do what I did? You're probably judging me already. It's fine. I would too. But before you point fingers, let me tell you my story. Imagine giving a man your all. Your love, your heart, your soul, your very essence. Imagine bending over backward every day for 17 years, only to wake up one day and realize you were building a house on quicksand. 17 years. That's how long I was married to Christopher. 17 long, beautiful, painful, and exhausting years. Christopher was the kind of man who could charm you with a smile. The kind of man who made you believe in forever. And I did. God knows I believed in forever. We met in collège. He wasn't rich, but he had dreams, big dreams. He said all the right things, made all the right promises. And when he slipped that ring on my finger, I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. I gave up so much to be with him. My friends, my family, my independence. When he lost his job 5 years into our marriage, I didn't complain. I picked up extra shifts at work, sacrificing sleep, time, and energy to keep our family afloat. I worked like a mule, stretching every dollar just to make sure the bills were paid, the kids were clothed, and the fridge was never empty. What did he do in return? He compared me. Constantly. Why are you complaining, Amanda? Don't you know so-and-so's wife does this without saying a word? Or, my friend's mother used to do this and more, and she never nagged her husband. I never said a word. I swallowed my pain and kept going because that's what love does, right? It endures. It sacrifices. It fights. But love shouldn't blind you. Love shouldn't make you a fool. I'll never forget the day I found out. It was a Friday afternoon, one of those rare days when I'd left work early. I wanted to surprise him, cook his favorite meal, light some candles, maybe rekindle a spark that had long since faded. I drove to his office, but he wasn't there. Christopher left hours ago, his colleague said. Left? To where? I tried calling him, but he didn't pick up. Something felt off, so I followed my gut. I drove to a part of town I'd never been to before, my heart pounding in my chest. That's when I saw him, hand in hand with another woman. And not just any woman. She was younger, prettier, and pregnant. He kissed her, right there in broad daylight, as if the life we'd built meant nothing. As if I meant nothing. I sat there in the car, watching, shaking, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. And then, as if fate wanted to drive the knife deeper, a little boy ran up to them, shouting, "Daddy." It hit me like a freight train. He had a second family. A wife. A child. A whole other life. The betrayal was like acid burning through my veins. 17 years of loyalty. 17 years of love, sacrifice, and blind devotion. And this was my reward? When I confronted him that night, he didn't deny it. He didn't even flinch. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You're overreacting, Amanda. Men do this all the time. You're lucky I come home to you at all." Lucky. That was the moment something inside me snapped. All the years of pain, humiliation, and silent suffering boiled over. I wasn't going to be his fool anymore. You're probably asking yourself, so what did you do, Amanda? Oh, I did what any woman with nothing left to lose would do. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'll get to that. For now, let's go back to the beginning, to the woman I used to be before life taught me the harshest lesson of all. Let me take you on this journey. The lies, the love, the betrayal, and the revenge. Because what I did in the end will shock you. 17 years ago, I was a starry-eyed girl in my early 20s, hopelessly in love with Christopher. He wasn't like the other boys on campus. He had this quiet confidence, a way of looking at you like you were the only person in the world. When he spoke about his dreams of starting his own business, of building a future together, I believed every word. Our love story felt like a fairy tale at first. Christopher was attentive, charming, and full of promises. He didn't have much, but he had ambition, and that was enough for me. I didn't care about money or status. I was in love with the man he was, or at least the man I thought he was. I remember our wedding day like it was yesterday. The sun was shining, the church was filled with family and friends, and I couldn't stop smiling. As we exchanged vows, I looked into his eyes and saw my future, a happy one, for better or worse, in sickness and in health. I meant every word. I would have walked through fire for Christopher. In the early years of our marriage, we were inseparable. We laughed together, dreamed together, and planned for a future that seemed so bright. Even when money was tight, we made it work. I was determined to be the wife he deserved. The kind of wife who would stand by her man no matter what. But life has a way of testing even the strongest of vows. 5 years into our marriage, Christopher lost his job. At first, I wasn't worried. He was smart, capable, and ambitious. I was sure he'd bounce back in no time. But days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. The man who once radiated confidence began to shrink into himself. He'd spend hours on the couch, watching TV, while I worked double shifts to keep the lights on. I didn't mind at first. I told myself it was just a rough patch, that he needed time to get back on his feet. I was patient, supportive, loving. But as the months turned into years, resentment started to creep in. Christopher wasn't just unemployed. He was uninterested. He stopped trying, stopped dreaming, stopped being the man I fell in love with. And yet, he never stopped demanding. Amanda, why isn't dinner ready yet? Amanda, the kids' school fees are due. What are you going to do about it? Amanda, can't you pick up an extra shift at work? Other wives do it without complaining. His words were like tiny daggers, chipping away at my self-worth. But I never let him see how much it hurt. I kept smiling, kept working, kept trying to be the perfect wife, because that's what love does, right? It forgives. It endures. My friends and family thought I was crazy. Amanda, you're doing too much, they'd say. You need to take care of yourself. Stop letting him walk all over you. But I couldn't. I loved him too much. I believed in him, even when he stopped believing in himself. Looking back, I realize now that love made me blind. Or maybe it wasn't love, it was fear. Fear of failure. Fear of admitting that the man I'd built my life around wasn't who I thought he was. But the breaking point didn't come until that fateful day, when I discovered the truth about Christopher. The day I found out about her, his other wife, and their son. It wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation. 17 years of my life wasted on a man who didn't even have the decency to hide his lies. But here's the thing about betrayal. It changes you. It burns away the parts of you that were soft and forgiving, leaving something harder, colder, and unrecognizable in its place. That was the day Amanda, the devoted wife, died. And Amanda, the woman who would stop at nothing to reclaim her life, was born. But let me take you deeper into this story. Let me show you the moments that led to the revenge you're all dying to hear about. The day I discovered Christopher's double life started like any other. I had just wrapped up a long shift at the hospital where I worked as a nurse. My feet ached, my body screamed for rest, but all I could think about was getting home to my husband and kids. I stopped by the grocery store on my way home, picking up ingredients for his favorite meal, chicken Alfredo. Cooking for Christopher had become one of my love languages. Even after everything, I still tried. I still cared. But something gnawed at me that day, a feeling I couldn't shake. Christopher had been distant for weeks. He spent more time on his phone, always guarding the screen like it held the secrets of the universe. He'd leave the house for hours without explanation, returning with vague excuses that never added up. I told myself I was overthinking. 17 years of marriage does that to you. Makes you paranoid about things that don't matter. Or so I thought. That evening, as I was setting the table, his phone buzzed on the counter. He had left it there by mistake, something he never did. I wouldn't have touched it. I wasn't that kind of wife, but the screen lit up with a message that caught my eye. I miss you too, babe. When will you come see us again? The kids ask about you every day. Kids. Plural. My heart stopped. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The walls of our kitchen seemed to close in on me. I picked up the phone, my hands trembling as I unlocked it with the passcode I'd watched him enter countless times. What I found inside shattered my world. Text messages, photos, videos, a whole life I knew nothing about. Her name was Felicia. She was younger than me, maybe by 10 years. Beautiful in a polished, Instagram-perfect way. And their sons, were the spitting image of Christopher. There were messages detailing vacations they'd taken together, family outings, and even plans for the future. Our future. The future I thought we were building together. I sat down at the kitchen table, clutching the phone like it was a bomb about to go off. Tears streamed down my face, hot and angry. How could he do this to me? To our children? To the life I'd sacrificed so much to build? I didn't even realize he had walked in until I heard his voice behind me. What are you doing with my phone? His tone was cold, defensive, as if I were the one who had done something wrong. I turned to him, holding the phone up like evidence in a courtroom. Who is Felicia? For a moment, he froze. Then, as if flipping a switch, his face hardened. Don't start, Amanda. I'm tired. I don't need this right now. Tired? I laughed bitterly. You're tired? I've been working double shifts to support this family while you've been out playing house with another woman. He rolled his eyes. Amanda, this isn't a big deal. Men do this all the time. You should be grateful I come home to you at all. Grateful. That word echoed in my mind like a cruel joke. You're unbelievable, I whispered, my voice shaking with rage. 17 years, Christopher. 17 years I've given you. And this is how you repay me. He shrugged, as if my pain was an inconvenience. You're overreacting. It's not like I don't take care of you and the kids. I stared at him, incredulous. Take care of us? I'm the one keeping this family afloat. I'm the one sacrificing everything while you. Enough, he barked, slamming his hand on the table. You're not perfect either, Amanda. Maybe if you spent less time nagging and more time being the woman I married, I wouldn't have needed Felicia. Something inside me snapped. The love I had clung to for so long crumbled into dust. You needed her? I said, my voice dangerously calm. Fine. Let's see how much you need her when I'm done with you. He laughed, a low, mocking sound. What are you going to do, Amanda? Leave me? You wouldn't survive without me. Those words lit a fire in me I didn't know existed. You're right, Christopher, I said, smiling through my tears. I wouldn't survive without you. But let's see how you survive without me. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to leave him. I was going to take back everything he'd stolen from me. My love, my time, my sacrifices. And I was going to make him regret the day he ever thought he could take me for granted. But how? That part required careful planning. That night, I didn't sleep. While Christopher snored away, oblivious to the storm brewing beside him, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind raced, piecing together a plan that would not only free me, but ensure he paid for every tear I'd shed, every sacrifice he'd mocked, and every betrayal he thought he could get away with. I wasn't going to walk away empty-handed. No, I deserved more. I deserved justice. And justice, I realized, wasn't about walking out the door with my dignity intact. It was about leveling the playing field. I spent weeks gathering information. Christopher had always been careless with details, assuming I was too naive to notice. He underestimated me, and that would be his downfall. First, I tracked every financial move he made. It didn't take long to discover that his bank accounts, our accounts, were far healthier than I thought. Despite his claims of being broke, he'd been funneling money to Felicia, paying for her rent, her car, and even private school tuition for their kids, all while I scraped by to make ends meet for our family. Second, I dug into his assets. The house, the car, even the small property he'd inherited from his late father. I wanted to know every detail. It wasn't hard. Years of being the responsible one in the marriage meant I had access to everything. Bank statements, property deeds, credit reports. I combed through them all with the precision of a woman on a mission. But the real gem came when I stumbled upon a loan approval letter buried in his desk. Christopher had taken out a significant line of credit in both our names. I hadn't signed for it. He must have forged my signature. The thought made my blood boil, but it also gave me the leverage I needed. One night, as Christopher was out working late, I called Felicia. I knew it was risky, but I needed to look her in the eye, or at least hear her voice. When she answered, I kept my tone calm, almost friendly. Hello, Felicia, I said. This is Amanda, Christopher's wife. There was a long silence on the other end before she finally spoke. What do you want? I just thought you should know, I said sweetly, that while Christopher's been playing house with you, I've been cleaning up his messes, paying his debts, sacrificing my life for a man who doesn't deserve it. But that's all about to change. Why are you telling me this? She asked, her voice dripping with irritation. Because you should prepare yourself, I said, my tone icy now. When I'm done with him, he won't have anything left to give you, or your kids. I hung up before she could respond. The conversation wasn't for her benefit. It was for mine. I wanted her to know the storm that was coming. Over the next few weeks, I put my plan into action. First, I sold everything Christopher owned that wasn't nailed down. His car, his electronics, even his expensive watch collection. I did it all legally, of course. After all, we were married, and everything he owned was half mine. Then I borrowed against the house. It was risky, but I knew Christopher wouldn't notice until it was too late. I used the money to settle the remaining debts he'd left in my name, ensuring that when the dust settled, I'd be free and clear. Finally, I emptied his bank accounts. Every penny he'd squirreled away for Felicia, I transferred into a separate account under my name. It wasn't theft, it was compensation. By the time Christopher realized what was happening, it was already too late. He came home one evening to find the house stripped bare, the locks changed, and a letter waiting for him on the doorstep. Christopher, you once told me I wouldn't survive without you, but I think we both know now that's not true. While you were busy living your double life, I was busy building mine. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. I've sold the house, emptied your accounts, and paid off every debt you left me with. What's left is yours to deal with alone. I've taken the kids with me. Don't bother trying to find us. We deserve better than the scraps you were willing to give. Enjoy your freedom. You'll need it, because you've just lost the best thing that ever happened to you. Goodbye, Amanda. I left the country that night with my children, boarding a flight to London. It was a clean break, a fresh start. As the plane soared into the night sky, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in years, I was free. The air in London felt different, crisp, fresh, full of possibilities. As the taxi sped through the city streets, I gazed out the window, marveling at the life I was about to begin. My children, Clara and Ethan, sat quietly beside me, their small hands clutching mine. I could see the questions in their eyes, but they didn't ask. Maybe they sensed that I needed time to breathe, to process, to rebuild. When we arrived at the small apartment I had rented online, it wasn't much, but it was ours. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of control, of ownership. No Christopher, no Felicia, no betrayals waiting to ambush me. Just me and my kids, ready to carve out a life we deserved. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into creating a stable foundation for us. I'd always been good at planning and budgeting. It's what had kept Christopher's household running for so many years. Now I used those skills to rebuild my life. I secured a job at a private clinic. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well enough to cover our expenses. The kids started school, slowly adjusting to the new environment. And me, I started living again. At first, it was little things, cooking meals for myself instead of Christopher, decorating the apartment in ways that made me happy, sitting down with a book and a glass of wine without feeling guilty. But eventually it became bigger. I began to rediscover Amanda. Not the wife, not the mother, just Amanda. One night, while the kids were asleep, I sat down and started writing. It began as a way to process my emotions, but it quickly turned into something more. I wrote about my marriage, the betrayal, and the strength it took to walk away. I poured my heart into those pages, not holding back, not sugarcoating anything. It wasn't long before I realized I had a story worth sharing. I decided to publish my story anonymously online, titling it The Price of Betrayal. I didn't expect much from it. Maybe a few readers, maybe some kind words of support. But within weeks, it went viral. People from all over the world reached out to me. Women who had endured similar betrayals, men who wanted to understand the pain they had caused, even therapists who praised my courage and vulnerability. It was overwhelming but healing. For the first time, I felt seen, heard, validated. But just as I was beginning to settle into my new life, the past came knocking. It started with a phone call. "Hello, Amanda," came the familiar voice on the other end. I froze. "Christopher, how did you get this number?" I asked, my voice cold and detached. "You think you can just walk away and leave me in ruins?" He spat. "You took everything from me, my money, my house, my life. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Do you have any idea what you did, Christopher? 17 years of my life gone. My dreams, my self-respect gone. And you're mad about money? Please. You'll pay for this, Amanda," he hissed. Mark my words. But his threats didn't scare me. I had built something stronger than he could ever destroy, myself. As the months passed, I continued to thrive. My story gained even more traction, leading to a book deal and invitations to speak at events. I became an advocate for women trapped in toxic relationships, sharing my journey and encouraging them to find their strength. Christopher's threats became empty whispers in the background of my success. Felicia, I heard through the grapevine, had left him once his money ran out. Karma, it seemed, had its own sense of justice. One evening, as I stood on stage at a packed auditorium, sharing my story with hundreds of women, I realized something profound. Christopher may have broken me, but he didn't destroy me. I closed my speech with the words that had become my mantra. Sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's giving yourself permission to be free. And freedom, that's priceless. The audience erupted into applause, but in that moment, the real victory wasn't their approval. It was mine. I had won. Christopher's downfall came swiftly and mercilessly. After I left, his perfect world crumbled like a house of cards. With his accounts emptied and his assets sold, he had no choice but to move in with Felicia. At first, she welcomed him, but the novelty of his charm wore off quickly when the money dried up. Without his financial support, Felicia began to question her decision to build a life with him. Their fights escalated into shouting matches, each one more venomous than the last. Felicia accused him of lying to her, of promising her a future he could no longer deliver. And then the final blow came. One evening, in the midst of an argument, Felicia dropped a bombshell. "You think you're a good father? You're not even their father." Christopher froze, disbelief etched on his face. What are you saying?" "The boys aren't yours, Christopher," she said coldly. "Did you really think I was stupid enough to rely on a man who was already married? I had a backup plan." The words hit him like a freight train. Everything he had destroyed his family for, the affair, the lies, the betrayal, was built on a foundation of deceit. The children he had claimed as his own weren't even his. Felicia left him that night, taking her sons with her. Christopher was left alone in the apartment he could no longer afford. With no money, no family, and no prospects, he spiraled into despair. The bitter spiral. Christopher tried to reach out to friends, but they wanted nothing to do with him. His once loyal allies had turned their backs, unwilling to associate with a man who had burned every bridge. He began drinking, first as a way to numb the pain, then as a daily ritual. Cheap liquor became his closest companion, the only thing that dulled the shame and regret that consumed him. His days blurred into nights, each one more hopeless than the last. He wandered the streets aimlessly, a shadow of the man he once was. The confident, ambitious Christopher was gone, replaced by a broken shell. One day, he gathered the courage to call me. I don't know why I answered, but I did. "Amanda," his voice slurred. I need you." I closed my eyes, letting the silence stretch between us. "You don't need me, Christopher. You need to face the consequences of your choices." But I'm sorry," he stammered. "I didn't mean for things to end this way." "Sorry doesn't erase 17 years of betrayal," I said, my voice steady. "You didn't just hurt me, you destroyed yourself." He broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity, but it was quickly replaced by resolve. "Christopher," I said, "I've moved on. You need to do the same. But before you can, you have to face the truth. You did this to yourself. Goodbye." I hung up, my heart heavy but unshaken. The triumph of Amanda. Christopher's fall was a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the cost of greed, betrayal, and selfishness. Meanwhile, my life flourished. My book became a bestseller, my children thrived, and I found peace in the life I had rebuilt. I eventually found love again, not with a man, but with myself. For the first time, I was whole. As for Christopher, he faded into obscurity, a man who lost everything because he didn't value the one thing that mattered most, the woman who had loved him unconditionally. And that, my friends, is why I did what I did.